in gacha games in general, or any resource management game basically, we can agree that our decisions are driven by value, scarcity, and utility. These are the main factors, and this is how you can decide if, let's say, spending 2,500 of your premium currency diamonds on these 10 tokens are worth it for you or not worth it for you. There was another video on this. Now, this concept is there in any game where new tech is introduced and your current currency can be used in the future for better value deals than what you have right now. So to illustrate what this is like in any game whatsoever, let me elaborate. And let me introduce another concept. When, let's say, you have one chip on a poker table, and you have 3 opponents. They all have 1,000 chips. And in these specific cases, there are questions, okay, what is my one chip worth comparatively? So how much value am I holding in the game? And it's really similar. How much is this value? And it depends on your situation, right? So this is why I couldn't answer whether for everyone the 2000 chest is okay to purchase, even though the baseline value is this. And I couldn't answer if there is a situation when it is worth for you to purchase the overpriced 2500 chest, because your situation may be different. And a lot of people come with the value calculations, and value in itself is not enough. That's what I'm saying. And I'm gonna give you a sneak peek into what I used to deal with like more than 10 years ago. I'm quite certain that there are some ICM calculator. This one is a paid thing, I know. This is a free thing, I think. So imagine that the stacks are like 1,000 chips, 1,000 chips, 1,000 chips, and you have one chip on a poker table. But then the question is, so this is not a question I can answer like how much value do you have out of the game? Because I don't know the payouts. If the payouts are like, okay, once we stand up, we take the chips back and convert them, one chip equals $1, then obviously our value is $1. And others have $3,000. So we are getting approximately 1 over 3001, which is like a really low value of all the chips. So we can understand that. But then if the payout ratio is in a way that the first place player gets 50%, second place player gets 30%, third place player gets 20% of all the chips, then our value goes up massively, because all of a sudden we get a somewhat larger percentage in the tournament. Instead of 0.03, we get 0.05. Well, that's not that big of a deal. But all of a sudden, if it's like we have our one chip, and the prices are like this, and I'll add slightly more because it's quite hard to make it up as 100. Then all of a sudden, if you calculate this, or let's say 34, 33, 33, how about this? Maybe I need to enter it again. So 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, and 1, and 34, 33, 33. Calculate. There you go. So your value went up big time. So you get twice as much value for one chip. Now this is not that interesting, but then let's suppose that there is a situation. The reason why the values are not that big is that we assume that others play well enough. But let's suppose that what happens is that you have already put in the blinds and you have one chip left. The first player goes all in for 1,000. The second place player calls with 1,000. This should never happen in a poker game, by the way. And then you have your one chip, and that's a big question mark, what do you do? And let's say there is the next player, we call him Big Blind, for example, BB, has, let's say, 1200 chips in this specific case. What do you do with this one remaining chip? And you look down at your cards and you have aces, AA. What do you do? And in this case, the correct answer is you fold. No matter what your hand is, you fold. Because imagine, let's pretend that we know the cards that this player has kings. This player has not sure what, like ace king, for example. And it doesn't even matter what the big blind has, like let's say 8-7 suited, for example. In this specific case, you know that no matter what the result of this clash is, as long as it's not a draw for which you have like 1 or 2% chance, the tournament is going to be over because the payout ratio is like 34, 33, 33. And you get 33% of the prize pool just for folding pocket aces. You know how much your one chip is worth? A lot more. Significantly more than any of the chips of anyone else. Simply because the tournament is gonna be over as soon as the common cards are dealt. And here it doesn't have 30% chance because we're blocking 2 of their aces. So especially if you have, in real life you have, let's say, something like this, like you have 1000 chips and 1010 chips, so you know that this player would survive, but this has the better chance, right? And you just have your one chip. In this case, you see that you have the best possible hand that you can, that wins like at 80% against anything else. And yet you're folding and your one chip is gonna mean 33% of the full prize pool. You know what 33% of all the chips would be in this case? So 3200 approximately, so 1070, for example. Your one chip has a value of 1070 chips in this specific situation when you know that your opponents went all in. Because you're guaranteed to get the prize pool assuming that you fold. Maybe a bit less, maybe just 900, because miracles can happen and the other player can win, or there can be a draw. So you see that all of a sudden this one chip was worth a lot more. And the same thing is happening here in purchasing decisions. You can do calculations day and night. It's not a bad heuristics, but it's not everything. And at the same time, you see that you get demolished by other players who take seemingly bad calls on purchases. But at the same time, it makes sense because it's not just value that you also want scarcity and utility. Same thing as in the poker tournament. Now, you know what happened in the poker world afterwards? People got educated on ICM, independent chip model, that assigned a value to your current situation, given the price pool. This is ICM. Let's say you have, I'll start it again, 50, 30, 20. Suppose that you have like 2000 chips here, 1000 chips here. This is you with 500 chips, and another player has like 6000 chips, for instance. And then you got a value. And you know that chip EV wise, you have like 5.26% of all the value, meaning that these chips are 5.26% of all the chips in circulation. But because of your situation, smaller stacks get increased in value, so it gets 10.57. And just imagine what would happen if, let's say we had this 34, 33, 33 distribution. In that case, your chips would go even more up in value because from 5.26 now you got 13%. People understood this. And then you know what happened? They started entering into a situation when, let's say you have 4 players, okay? 4 players, and then it's like 1000 chips, and then 800 chips. Here you are with like 600 chips, and there is like another player with 1500 chips. And the blind bets were 100, 200. and the payout is the same, like 50, 30, 20. Okay, so then you put in the blind bet 100. This player puts in the blind bet 200. And let's say the chips are opposite, so it's like 1000 and 1300, like this. This is a distribution. This player goes all in with 1300. So he got 0 left. This player goes all in the 1000. This player folds. And you look down at your cards and you see something marginal. You see something marginal, and let's say, I might even say that we went all in with 2000. You see something marginal. But then you understand that in the position of the opponent is in, he's supposed to go all in with any 2 cards. Okay, any 2 cards. If you see a poker odds calculator, in that case, for example, there is this one, there is this one, let's say an odds calculator, that against a hand range. So the other option is that you use ChatGPT, for instance, because I don't have an odds calculator. Okay, so in a Texas Hold'em game, come on, game, a player pushes all in with any 2 cards, range 100%. You call, or what are your odds of winning with, let's say, 10-7 suited? What about Jack 10 suited? %48%. And with Jack 10 suited, you're actually the favorite. Suppose that you have Jack 10 suited. You know that in this specific situation, your odds of winning is 56%. However, what does ICM say? In order to understand what ICM says, we need to see the 2 specific situations that are left. And for this, you need to understand the 2 possible outcomes. One of the outcomes is that you lose. Your winning are 0. The other option is that you win. And if you win, in that case, your opponent is gonna get, out of the 2000, he's gonna keep 1400 chips. And the 800 chips player folded. And you more than double up, because you're gonna win 600 here. If you call, you get it back. You win 600 from him and 200 from him. So you get essentially 1400 chips. And this opponent will eventually have to fold almost always, simply because it doesn't pay off for him to go against the chip leader. So he keeps 1000 chips. So this means that if you lose, your winnings are 0. Right now, your equity in the 50, 30, 20 possibility, let's see, prizes, it's like 50, 30, 20. Right now, your equity is this, 10.57%. Right? And if you win, in that case, the situation will be different, because he has 1400, 800, 1400 and 1000. Then we will have all of a sudden an equity of 28.53% if we win. So in this specific case, you understand intuitively that calling is not a bad situation. Not that bad of a situation. Because you almost triple your equity. But then let's suppose that you don't have the 56% chance of winning, but only the 48%. In that case, you will increase your equity 20.33 multiplied by 0.48, which is you increase your equity from 10.57 to 13.69. This is fine. But in another situation, when the payouts are 34, 33, 33, so once again it's situation dependent, your new equity is gonna be only 27.67 and your old equity was 13.5. So essentially you only double your equity. So as soon as you do 27.67 multiplied by this, you see that it becomes a bad decision to call, because with that, with your 10-7 suited that you have 48% chance of winning, and your overall equity is gonna go down before the common cards are dealt. It's gonna go down from 13.5% to 13.28%. And then any calculator based on ICM independent chip model would advise you to fold, because you don't want to go down with your equity. And this is when I innovated back in 2009 or 2008, saying that this is nonsense, that's garbage. Simply because this model doesn't take two things into consideration. I understand this is a bad deal. This is not a discount, this is bad. My equity goes down. But wait a minute. I have two more hands to see before I'm forced into a situation when I'm gonna be the big blind with 500 chips and I need to put in 200 chips. And from then onwards it will be really hard to get away from the hand. And most likely I'm gonna get a worse deal in that situation. So is it worth taking a small loss into my equity right now and make sure that 50% of the time or 48% of the time I can continue the game, and taking the small loss now to avoid a bigger loss later? Or in other case, is it worth giving up on a small win in order to get a better win later? This is what I learned back in the days. And that's why I'm playing in a way how I'm playing, that, okay, I understand the value. But then I also understand that there are many other valuable opportunities out there. This is what opportunity cost symbolizes. And then in some cases, it may be worse using this that is actually at a discount, because you have something else that is better for you. Or in other cases, you might just take the 2500 chest that is at a surplus with respect to the regular price. So you pay premium for this, but at the same time it gives you this utility. And you won't be able to do it in other places. That's why we have these arguments. And this is why it's not clear-cut. And those who are the most successful with the resources that they have right now are not just looking at value. They also look at scarcity, they also look at utility. This is the argument that is really important to understand as well. And don't use it as a cognitive bias that, oh, I want this shiny unit so badly, so I will somehow rationalize it to myself that I want to get it. No, it's rather strategic. And that's what you will need to reason and understand. Value, scarcity, utility. I cannot repeat it often enough.